Imagine waking up one morning as the second most powerful man on earth. You command armies, you negotiate with kings, emperors fear your name, the Sultan himself calls you his brother. And then you go to sleep, and you never wake up again. Not on a battlefield, not from illness, not from an enemy's sword, but killed silently in the night by the very man who once swore to protect you with his life. This is not fiction. This happened. And the man at the center of this story was not a villain. He was not a traitor. He was simply too powerful, too brilliant, and perhaps too trusting. This is the story of Pargalı Ibrahim Pasha, the slave who became a Grand Vizier, the friend who became a threat, and the man whose rise and fall tells us everything about what power truly costs. Let's go back to the beginning. On the western coast of Greece, in a small coastal town called Parga, a boy is born. His family is Greek. Some historians suggest his father may have been a sailor or a fisherman, a humble life, far from the corridors of power. But history has a strange way of choosing its protagonists. As a young boy, some accounts say he was around 6 years old, Ibrahim is captured by Ottoman raiders and taken as a slave. This was not unusual in the 15th and 16th century Ottoman world. The empire had a sophisticated system called the devshirme, where young boys, particularly Christian families from the Balkans and Greece, were taken, converted to Islam, educated, and trained to serve the Sultan. Some of these boys became soldiers, some became administrators, and a very rare few, the most gifted ones, entered the palace itself. Ibrahim was one of those rare few. He enters the palace as a page, a personal servant. He is educated in language, music, history, and statecraft. He plays the violin with exceptional skill. He is sharp, charming, and carries himself with a natural elegance that draws people toward him. And it is here, inside the walls of the Topkapi Palace, that he meets a young prince. His name is Suleiman. What happened between Ibrahim and Suleiman in those early years is one of the most remarkable relationships in all of Ottoman history. They were not just master and servant. They were, by every account we have, genuine friends, brothers in spirit. They studied together, debated together, and developed a bond of trust that seemed unbreakable. When Suleiman became Sultan at the age of 26, he did not forget his friend. Within just 2 years, he elevated Ibrahim to the position of chief falconer, then Grand Marshal of the palace, and then, in 1523, to the highest office in the entire empire, Grand Vizier, Sadrazam, the Prime Minister of the Ottoman world. Ibrahim was approximately 28 years old. Think about that for a moment. A Greek-born former slave, not yet 30 years old, now stood second only to the Sultan of the most powerful empire on earth. He managed the treasury, he commanded the military, he conducted foreign diplomacy. When European ambassadors came to Constantinople, they didn't just meet the Sultan, they negotiated with Ibrahim. The Venetians wrote about him in awe. The French sought his alliance, the Habsburgs feared him. And Suleiman? Suleiman trusted him completely. He gave Ibrahim something no Grand Vizier had ever received before, a written guarantee, a personal promise from the Sultan that Ibrahim would never be executed during Suleiman's lifetime. It seemed like an unbreakable bond. It wasn't. Ibrahim Pasha was not merely a figurehead, he was a strategic genius. In 1526, he stood at the Battle of Mohács, one of the most decisive military victories in Ottoman history. The Hungarian army, considered one of the finest in Europe, was crushed in less than 2 hours. Ibrahim's planning, his coordination of artillery, infantry, and cavalry, his reading of the battlefield, it was masterful. Hungary fell, Vienna trembled. In 1533, Ibrahim led a campaign into Persia against the Safavid Shah Tahmasp. He captured Tabriz, entered Baghdad, and extended Ottoman dominance deep into the east. It was during this campaign that he did something that would later be used against him. He called himself Serasker Sultan, Sultan of sultans among the commanders. He used the word sultan, a title reserved exclusively for the Ottoman sovereign. Was it arrogance? Was it a military title used loosely in the heat of victory? Historians debate this, but his enemies, and he had many, noted it carefully, filed it away, waited. Because that is how palace politics works. You don't strike when a man is at his peak, you wait. You collect grievances, and you strike when the moment is perfect. The man who had no shortage of enemies was also a man who made one fatal mistake. He had forgotten to be afraid. In the Ottoman court, survival required a certain careful humility, even from the most powerful. You served the Sultan, you glorified the Sultan, you reminded everyone, including yourself, that your power was borrowed, not owned. Ibrahim, somewhere along the way, may have forgotten this. He lived in a palace on the Hippodrome gifted by Suleiman that rivaled the Sultan's own quarters in its grandeur. He received ambassadors in a manner befitting a king. He made decisions that sometimes bypassed Suleiman entirely. He was, in the eyes of many, not just the second most powerful man in the empire, but the most powerful. And power that large, unchecked, visible, celebrated, always attracts something dangerous. It attracts jealousy. And in the inner chambers of the Topkapi Palace, there was one person watching Ibrahim's rise with cold, calculating eyes. Her name was Hurrem Sultan. Hurrem, known in the West as Roxolana, was Suleiman's wife, and she was brilliant, politically intelligent in a way that is almost frightening to study. She understood the Ottoman court not as a ceremony, but as a battlefield, and she fought for her children's futures with absolute precision. Ibrahim represented a threat to that future. As long as Ibrahim stood beside Suleiman, Hurrem's influence had a ceiling. Ibrahim could whisper in Suleiman's ear. Ibrahim could shape decisions. Ibrahim was the wall between Hurrem and total influence over the Sultan. So, she moved carefully, deliberately. She cultivated alliances with those who resented Ibrahim. She amplified stories of his arrogance, his pride, his use of the title Sultan. She placed doubt, slowly, methodically, in Suleiman's mind. And there was another man, Rustem Pasha, who would later become Grand Vizier himself and who was married to Hurrem's daughter. He fed information, shaped narratives, and built the case against Ibrahim piece by piece. By 1536, after 13 years of unrivaled power, the walls were closing in. Ibrahim must have sensed it. Accounts from the time suggest he was uneasy in his final weeks. Perhaps he remembered the written promise Suleiman had made him. Perhaps he believed in it still. On the night of March 5, 1536, Ibrahim Pasha dined with Sultan Suleiman at the Topkapi Palace. It was, by all accounts, a normal evening. They ate together, they spoke together. The warmth of their decades-long friendship, or at least the appearance of it, was present at the table. Ibrahim retired to his chambers within the palace to sleep. He was strangled in the night. By morning, the most powerful Grand Vizier in Ottoman history was dead. His body was buried without ceremony, quietly, quickly, as if erasing him from the story as fast as possible. His immense wealth was confiscated by the state. His name, for a time, was scrubbed from official records. he was 40 years old. Suleiman the Magnificent, the lawgiver, the greatest sultan in Ottoman history, continued his reign for another 30 years. So why did Ibrahim fall? Confirmed, when we study his story with clear eyes, 3 truths emerge. First, he confused proximity to power with the possession of power. Being close to the Sultan was not the same as being protected by the Sultan. In the Ottoman system, the Sultan's word was law, including the law to take back what he had given. Calm. Second, he accumulated enemies faster than he built protections. Every brilliant decision he made in the field created resentment in the court. He was too good, too fast, too visible. And in a system built on hierarchy and loyalty to the throne,